I know. Welcome. Welcome to the Oregon City Council regular meeting for September 25th, 2023. The time now is 7:01, and we will open the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of council members present, please?
Mr. Dabish?
Here.
Mr. Drake? Here. Mr. Horniak?
Here.
Mrs. Paula?
Here.
Mr. Reeves?
Here.
Mr. Wallenczak?
Here.
Mr. Zale?
Here. Also present at tonight's meeting is Mayor Michael Safarian, City Administrator Joel Major, Clerk of Council Cassie Ralston, Law Director Melissa Pepora, Public Service Director Paul Roman, Police Chief Brandon Began, Assistant Police Chief Ryan Spangler, Fire Chief Clayton O'Brien, and Finance Director Nick Roman. Council, first order of business for this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes from September 11th, 2023.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
I move to approve the minutes from the September 11th, 2023 regular council meeting as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Thank you, Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing no objections, the meeting minutes from September 11th, 2023 have been accepted. Also, council, we need to add, because we did not have a committee of the whole meeting last week, we need to add items number 125 through 128, 2023 to this night's agenda.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, items 125 through 128 have been added to this evening's agenda. The first item is item 125, 2023, which is presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Public Service Director Paul Roman, and I will defer to Mr. Roman on item 125.
Thank you, Mr. President. This ordinance is needed to close out the 2022 sidewalk improvements project. If you recall, this project was awarded November of last year, and all the work took place this year in 23. And the work is the additional work is detailed in Exhibit A, but it was a bunch of various locations for some concrete work. In particular, the road program. I know we had to redo a drive apron, and we had to do some sidewalk to accommodate some drainage work. But other than that, we did have some changes in quantities here at the municipal complex and also at the Jake and Cooper's dog park. Again, the detailed descriptions in Exhibit A along with breakdown of costs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Roman, on the sidewalk program, do we have any particular areas, if we had this before, I forgot it, particular areas that we're looking at for the coming year?
Well, this, I can tell you in 24, I know Andrea Beard is working on our budget for next year, but the 22 was a lot of some work with the municipal complex, the senior center, as well as the dog park, and it was just miscellaneous sidewalk with that, included other concrete work. As for future improvements, I know Andrea has a list. I can get you that, but we'll present that at the 24 budget meetings.
Okay, yeah, I was speaking in regards to neighborhoods. We've done that.
Correct, yeah. And so as you know, and council knows that when it's a city tree causing the damage, that's a cost that we cover.
Right.
And then if it's some other work, then we usually assess that work and create a master list, and with the quantities, it helps brings the price down. But yeah, I think for the area that she is targeting, I'll have to check with her. And I'll present that to council again.
We were on a kind of a schedule for doing this in different parts of the city. Did we lose several years because of COVID? Did we stop doing it because of that, or?
No, I think we did do some community block grant sidewalk work. We're only doing so much per year, and with community block grant, it's the areas up on north of Bayshore Road. That takes up one whole year of doing that type of work. So it just depends. I know in the city trees, we always try to stay on top of doing that every year. But doing the assessment work, we're probably a year or two behind in doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, do you have any questions for Mr. Roman regarding item 125, 2023?
Mr. President.
Mr. Wallen's
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Roman, this is not in regards to this that's before us tonight, but it's about future sidewalk program work. And is there still Safe Route to School funds?
Yeah.
Can we utilize Kateri for Safe Route to Schools and get sidewalks up in there that would connect into the new downtown area then in that neighborhood?
And so, Mr. President, Mr. Wallensack, we did apply for grant funding to lay out a plan, which is always the start of asking for additional monies. And we are awarded that. ODOT is actually covering the cost of the plan, but it is coordinating this plan with the schools, the police, fire, and public service in laying out the best areas. The idea is to encourage children to walk to school. So yeah, we are targeting all of the school areas, and you try to concentrate within that mile radius of each school, trying to encourage kids. So yeah, there's a list of areas. Even out here on Seaman Road is certainly a candidate, as well as Pickle Road going east, further east of Coy School, and Schmidlin is another target area.
And I know you talk the Seaman Road out here. I drive my son to school every day, and I see a handful of kids walking on the edge of the road every morning.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it would serve a dual purpose for us as a city to have sidewalks up in there, Kateri and Cardinal Stretch.
The start of trying to obtain other grant funding is to have a master plan and list by priority, the areas you want to get that additional sidewalk. So
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Wallensack. Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 125, 2023 as ordinance 125, 2023, and ask Ms. Rawlston to read it into the record, please.
Authorizing the mayor, director of public service, and finance director to sign change order number 1 with Smith Paving and Excavating, Inc., 4426 North Old State Road, Norwalk, Ohio, 44857, in an amount of a net contract addition of $11,418.38 due to additional work related to the 2022 sidewalk improvements project and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 125 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Ms. Pauloff. Thank you, Ms. Pauloff. Ms. Rawlston, will you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Ordinance 125, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. The next item presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and Finance Director Nick Roman, item 126. I will defer to Mr. Roman.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is an annual resolution that we do to accept the amounts and rates from Lucas County. This is a 2 mil levy, and it comes out to $1,175,000. What it is.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Can you, 127 is pretty much like 126 to some degrees. You want to go ahead through 127?
Yeah,
also while you're-
absolutely. Yeah, so the next resolution is to request an advance on these payments. So we are able to collect them as soon as the county receives them. They send it right to us rather than us having to wait until the next year.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Council, any questions or comments regarding 126 or 127 for Mr. Roman? Hearing none, I will assign item 126, 2023 as resolution 126, 2023, and ask Ms. Rawlston to read it into the record.
A resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission of Lucas County, Ohio, authorizing the tax levies and certifying the same to the county auditor.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Horniak.
I move for passage of Resolution 126 of 2023.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Second by
Wallensack.
Mr. Wallenzak? Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of council on Resolution 126?
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Resolution 126, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Council, any additional comments or questions regarding item 127, 2023? Hearing none, I will assign item 127, 2023 as resolution 127, 2023 and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
A resolution requesting the auditor of Lucas County, Ohio for an advance payment of the current collection of taxes due to the city of Oregon.
Council,
Mr. President.
Mr. Wallenzak.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for passage of resolution number 127 of 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenzak.
Second.
Second, Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Ms. Ralston, would you take a roll call vote of council, please?
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mrs. Paula?
yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Resolution 127, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Next item for discussion is item 128, 2023, presented by Mayor Michael Safarian and City Administrator Joel Major, and I will defer to Mr. Major.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members of council. So this ordinance would authorize us to enter into an agreement with the Attorney General's office at the state to collect on for taxes, for delinquent taxes. Right now, we actually have a contract in place. It's at least 20 years old, roughly, with a James Restivo. We really don't collect a whole lot from this, and I'm talking like $2,000 or $3,000 a year in collections from this contract. And on top of that, this Restivo contract, they collect 33% of the amount that they collect. So they're getting a third share of it. So what the advantage of the Attorney General's office is that they don't take a percentage, but they assess a fee to the debtor on top of what they collect. So we would collect the full amount. And I think there's some other nuances in the contract here where they can take out costs. But the AG's office also has, they can cast a wider net. So they can search federal tax filings and collect and at least, research what other people are filing at the federal level where this Restivo contract doesn't have that ability, if that makes sense. So there's more capabilities at the AG's office that could discover additional missing delinquent taxes that aren't being collected now. So we feel that entering into this contract with the AG's office is better for us. One, because we're not really getting much from the current contract that's been in place for roughly 20 years. And two, because the AG's office just has a bigger network that they can reach to find debtors. So the recommendation here is to enter into a new contract with the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Council, any questions or comments regarding item 128?
Mr. President.
Mr. Horniak.
I do have a question, Mr. Mazur, if I may. And I was going to ask if this was new because I can't recall this. I mean, typical housekeeping things that we see, I did believe this to be different. Is there a belief from the city's point of view that utilizing the Ohio Attorney General for this service will produce more collection of delinquent debt? I mean, you're talking a couple $1,000s a year. Do we believe that this increases that with the extended capabilities of the AG's office?
I believe so. I can't say with certainty. We'll have to check and wait and see.
But that's the
there's-
hope, is that this provides a better collection opportunity and apparatus for that.
Yeah, and that's something we can ask them when people switch from a private collector, debt collector to state agency that has more capabilities, what do they normally see? And I believe what they would normally see is that you would have missing, there's blind spots. For instance, I'll just say gambling winnings or earnings or whatever could be something that gets missed. Things like that. So there are a lot of, or people working in the city, but, filing somewhere else. I mean, there's definitely some blind spots out there, so.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mazur. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. Thank you, Mr. Major. Council, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I will assign item 128, 2023 as ordinance 128, 2023, and ask Ms. Ralston to read it into the record.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Ohio Attorney General for delinquent tax collection and declaring an emergency.
Council,
Mr. President,
Mr. Davish.
I move for passage of ordinance 128 of 2023
Thank you,
as an
Mr. Davish.
emergency.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallensack. Thank you, Mr. Wallensack. Ms. Ralston, would you please take a roll call vote of council?
Mr. Davish?
Yes.
Mr. Wallensack?
Yes.
Mr. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Horniak?
Yes.
Mrs. Pauloff?
yes,
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Zale?
Yes, thank you, council. Item or ordinance 128, 2023 passes with 7 yeas and 0 nays. Council, this completes our agenda for this evening, and we'll now move to the mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a retirement and an appointment to make. I'll start with the retirement and ask, and the council, you see this correspondence we set out of Jeff Nagel retiring from the fire department. And then the second line, it says Craig has worked for the fire department, but it's actually Jeff has worked for 20 years. So after 20 years of service, Jeff Nagel has requested to retire. And his effective retirement date is September 21st, 2023. And I would ask council's concurrence in accepting of the retirement resignation of Jeff Nagel.
Council,
Mr. President,
Ms. Pauloff.
I move to concur with the mayor's acceptance of the retirement of Jeff Nagel from the fire department effective September 21st, 2023.
Thank you, Ms. Pauloff.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wallensack. Thank you, Mr. Wallensack. Council, any objections? Hearing none. Mr. Mayor, council does concur with accepting the retirement of Jeff Nagel.
Thank you. And next, the appointment in the streets department as the position of heavy equipment operator. I'd ask council's concurrence in the appointment of Mr. Mark Thomas of 6261 Corduroy Road to be placed at step 1 of the SB pay range of $30.25 an hour, annual rate $62,920. And once again, I would ask council's concurrence in the appointment effective October 9th, 2023.
Council. Mr. Davish.
I move to concur with the mayor of the appointment of Mr. Mark Thomas effective October 9th, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. Davish.
Second.
Second by Mr. Drake.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Drake. Council, are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Mayor, council does accept the hiring of Mark Thomas, heavy equipment operator.
I thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. President. Before I complete my report, Mr. Thomas is here in the back row there. If you want to come up 15, 20 minutes and give us a little bio about yourself, or 5 or 6 seconds, you could actually say something if you wish.
I'm Mark Thomas. I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to work for the city of Oregon now and look forward to, I guess, furthering my career and knowledge with what you guys have to offer me.
Appreciate
Welcome,
it.
Mark. Welcome.
aboard.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That does conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Major.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Major. Ms. Purpura.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Purpura. Mr. Roman.
No report.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Mr. Reeves,
No report, Mr. President.
Mr. Drake, Mr. Wallenczak.
No report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Wallenczak.
No report.
Mr. Davish,
No report.
Ms. Paulo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing from my standing committee, but kudos to Cassie and everyone who put on the Honey Festival, because it was
Yeah.
very successful. It was a great gathering, and I hope it continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Paulo. Mr. Horniak.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Horniak. And I have no report from my standing committee, but I'll echo what Ms. Paulo said. It was a very nice event, very nice. And I bought honey from 3 different places and they're, yeah, I do too. They're awesome. But that's all I have. We have no one signed in to speak this morning or this evening. I will seek a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Mr. Reeves.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Davish. Council, any objections? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.